You know, the problem we're trying to solve is by the time you plug a mic in, 4 A to Ds and D to As. You know, if we can keep all this as much as possible in the digital domain, digital's great for moving stuff around fast. This whole system with 256 channels can be reconfigured in one sample, a 44,100th of a second. Now, I don't know if we could hear that switching back and forth into a reverb at a 44,100th of a second, but it can do it, and it'll do it noiselessly, and the whole idea will be that, I mean, it'll all be sitting inside the computer, and you'll be able to do whatever you really need to do and send it out, either a stereo digital pair. Some of the other things that are coming for this bus, and these things I can't talk about manufacturers on, there'll be a sample playback card which has digital ins and outs. So or not digital ins and outs, excuse me, it'll have this digital bus on it. So it can talk directly to Pro Tools and then go out the balanced outs of Pro Tools if you want. There'll be a multi-channel digital out. They're looking at a couple different schemes. One of them is to do 8 AES EBU pairs, which I don't know whether I think is the right way. You know, there are FDDI networking things that'll let you play from audio from one hard disk in another room onto your, you know, on your system and be scrubbing it and working with something, so you don't have to transfer files all the time. This digital bus lets you do a lot of things, and someone's working on a set of meter bridges that is, you know, hardware metering that has some really cool software, things you can't do with current hardware meters, like if you point the mouse to the bottom of the fader, it gives you a pre-fader level, you point to the top of the fader, it gives you post-fader levels, you know, just cool stuff like that. And anything that we can think of that would be a cool audio process can be put on this card, and a lot of companies are jumping on with it. The idea is that right now there are 3,000 Pro Tool systems, or as of AES, which was, you know, a month ago, there were 3,000 Pro Tool systems out there in the world, and that is more than all the multi-track competitors combined. So if they're going to make something for a DAW, and really, I don't think there's any manufacturer out there that doesn't want to make something for DAW now. They're going to make it for ours because we have the most, you know, and it's just economics. They want to do it. The other thing we introduced at AES was the first. Remember how I said that Digidesign's DSP engineers would be making, you know, maybe reverbs and maybe their own flangers and their own delays and things like that. There were 6 of them working at Digidesign. Well, the first incarnation of that, because the DSP farm and the TDM stuff is not shipping, and it probably won't be till about February or January. The first incarnation of that is a software plug-in module to Sound Designer software, which does a lot of the same things that Pro Tools does, with the exception of being so graphic, for graphic editing, grabbing, and cutting and pasting. And it only does one stereo pair or a mono track. It doesn't do multi-track. But the first one of those software plugin modules we introduced was called Digidesign's Intelligent Noise Reduction. That'll be shipping the beginning of November. And, you know, I mean, we all know about the problems of noise. If we recorded me speaking right now, we'd have me speaking, but we'd also have this, and that fan, and this static from the lights, or the hum from the lights. We'd have all this other crap in the recording, too. You know, there's no substitute for good recording technique. But then again, you know, we always get files. We don't know how they were recorded. They were recorded by someone else or whatever the situation was. Intelligent noise reduction is exactly that. You can select a section of the noise less than 1/10 of a second, or if you don't have it alone, you can get it without it. But you can select a selection of the noise and say the program learn that, and it creates what Digidesign calls a model. It's not frequency based. It's partially, there's some frequency stuff there, there's some fast Fourier stuff there, there's some things that we don't know, the programmers won't tell us what they are. There's some things that are based on time, so a time domain type thing where every 256 samples it looks at it again. But what it comes up with is what Digidesign calls a model. And there's a model of noise and there's a model of signal. You can sort of think of it as anything that's steady state can be thrown into the model of noise, and anything that's not steady state will be thrown into the model of signal. But if there's steady state noise that is not that's at the same pitch as some of the signal, the problem with other noise reduction systems, other than the really expensive ones, is that they'll remove those frequencies as well. And we don't want to remove those frequencies. We just want to remove the noise, and that's what intelligent noise reduction does. We had it at AES, and you know, the you know, our competitor in that market is clearly Sonic Solutions. They have a system that removes noise called no noise. And that's what, you know, there was, you know, the big joke was that someone walked up to our booth and said something to the effect of, what's the difference between this and no noise? And I said, well, let's listen to it. He says, well, no, I want to have the same file. I want to try the exact same thing. I said, okay, well, you know, do you have something? And he had a tape, and he went over to he had apparently a fourth generation mix of the Beatles album, you know, just bounced down, and he took it over to the Sonic booth, and he did it. He got them to do it. He took it over to our booth, and he did it. And, you know, the answer to what the difference was $59,000, you know. I mean, it really works, the software. Theirs has some tweaky parameter control that ours is probably a little more difficult to get under the hood of, but ours is a lot faster and works, you know, I mean, you can't hear you don't hear any noise, so you don't need the tweaky parameter control if you don't hear it. However, the parameter control we do offer is that the only thing we really understand about noise, or our ears really understand about it, is frequency. Our ears would never hear a fast Fourier, inverse Fourier, out of phase, or if those things were out of phase, we would never hear any of that stuff. We would hear frequencies, however, and so it lets you tailor frequencies and say, don't affect anything over 10K, or don't affect between 10 and 10.5. You know, you can just real accurately select areas to change or not change. So if something is affecting it in a way you don't like it, you can fix it. But that intelligent noise reduction is the first step in this plug-in software module stuff. And for anyone that owns Pro Tools or Sound Tools too, doesn't work with the original Sound Tool systems, anyone that owns Pro Tools or Sound Tools too, they can add this intelligent noise reduction to Sound Designer, which they'll get the update to 2.4 if you're a Sound Designer owner. You add it for $9.95. So, and $4.95 for the first 3 months. And you know, it's cheap.
What's the first 3 months?
Well, the first 3 months should start within 2 weeks at the beginning of November. The day we actually ship it, you know, what's the difference between a used car salesman and a software salesman? Is a used car salesman knows when he's lying. Just tell us, you know, oh, it'll be there November 1st. You know, yeah. I gotta say Digidesign is pretty good.
By the end of the year.
They were about the latest I've ever seen them be is, you know, what was Pro Tools and the Pro Tools updates were about 90 days late. And, you know, I can see that as being, you know, late. I mean, in my mind, 90 days is really late, especially since, you know, I make a living on what is available to be sold at the time. On the other hand, it's not 3 years late, or, you know, I mean, I used to work for Unio, and I did when the Proteus came out. And that was, you know, where's my Proteus? It was a year and a half or something like that late. And I'm like, oh my God, that was really bad. You know, at any rate, I would expect to see it in November, definitely. Yes?
How about OMS support?
OMS support for Pro Tools 2.0, it's in there, it's done. I can actually run a little bit of the 2.0 software for a couple seconds. Is that what you're doing over there?
Yeah. I can't get it.
What's going on?
I can't get it. I tried, well, maybe there's a way of doing this. I tried opening, what do you have to open up, this or this? I opened it. I did this.
Yeah.
And this is what happened.
It says there's not enough memory.
No.
That's fine.
Oh, now it works.
Yeah, see, all I have to do is look at it and it works. Just to give you guys a little bit of an idea, now this software is not even in beta yet. So this is what we call alpha software, and it is horrible and uniformly horrible in terms of possibly crashing. So if it crashes, just remember that the other one didn't crash. What's going to happen right now, a lot of people complain that switching between the two programs is the biggest problem. There is time lost in switching between the two programs. So the first thing that we're doing is we're incorporating the two into one program that looks a lot more like Pro Edit than Pro Deck. Let me hide these EQs real quickly. And let me load an audio file, import audio. No, I don't want to do that. So here's an audio file. Interestingly, this looks a lot like Pro Deck.